Hello everybody, Squishy Pixels here, and today I'm going to be starting a new series on my channel where I will live solve LeetCode problems while explaining my thought process as well. Okay, so we're going to be starting off with a LeetCode classic. Number 1, two-sum. So the problem states that you're given an array of integers, nums, and an integer target. And in that array nums, you need to find two indices that sum up to integer target. So to solve this problem, we can use a conceptual approach of brute force. So I've just drawn out one example test case in my whiteboard here. So in this scenario, the target is equal to 9, and the list is just a list of numbers from 1 to 5. So the obvious answer here is getting the numbers 4 and 5, as that's the only two numbers in the list that sum to 9. So our approach would just be to make two pointers, I and j. And I would iterate through the list, and every time I goes one element to the right, j would go through all 5 elements, which would basically just go through every single possible combination of two elements in the list. Proceeding that, we could test every single element and check if they sum up to the given target. Okay, so now we have to actually code this up. So the first step is to make that exterior loop that we discussed in the logic, the I loop. So we can say for I in range len nums. And now we need the interior loop. So every time I iterates through one element of nums, the interior loop, which is j, will go through every element. So we can say for j in range len nums. So now if we reference I comma j, it will effectively get every single combination of two in the array nums. And we need to check if these combinations sum to the target. So is nums of I plus nums of j equals to the target? And in the question here, it says you may not use the same element twice. No, that does not mean the same number cannot be summed together twice. It just can't be the same element. So instead of saying and nums I not equal to nums j, we can just say and I not equal to j. And if that's true, we can return I, comma j as a list, like the question asks. And now running this on the 3 test cases LeetCode provides, we can see it passes all the test cases. And submitting this program, again, we can see that it's going to pass everything. Now, the approach that we used isn't the most optimal, and this is just because it has a O of n squared tag complexity, since we use two nested loops. And there are better ways to solve this problem, like using 2 pointers or a hash map, but in this video, we won't be going into those. Okay, so for the second problem, I'm going to be solving palindrome number, which in my opinion is actually one of the easiest LeetCode problems out there. So the question states that given an integer x, return true if x is a palindrome and false otherwise. And a palindrome is a number that reads the same front and back, like 1 to 1. So to solve this problem, all we have to do is check if the reversed integer is equal to the current integer. And if so, it is a palindrome, so we can return true, and otherwise return false. So return true if, and we need to convert the integer to a string so we can actually do list comprehension on it. So if string x is equal to string x, colon, -1. And this function just reverses a string or a list. And otherwise, we need to return false. So now running on the initial 3 test cases that LeetCode provides, we can see that we pass everything with a runtime of 0 ms, since this is O of 1. And if we submit this, we can also see that it will pass all of the solutions and with 3 ms, and it beats 88.82% of solutions. Okay, so the next problem that I'm going to be doing is length of last word. So this problem states that given a string S consisting of words and spaces, return the length of the last word in the string. So looking at the sample input, if we have hello world, we need to take the last word, which is world, and print the length of that, which is 5. So immediately what I'm thinking of doing is using Python's built-in .split function, because that will make a list of every single word. Then we can just reference the last element in that list and return the length of that. So we can make a list, which is s.split. So s is the string that we're given. So s.split will automatically create a list. And we want to get the last element of that, so we can do -1. And finally, we need to return the length of that element. So we can do return len of s.split bracket -1. And running this on Leetcode's 3 sample test cases, we can see we pass all of them with 1 times 0 ms. And if we submit the code against every test case, again, we can see we pass everything and it beats 100%. Okay, so we're going to be ending off the day with our first medium problem, longest palindromic substring. And this question is going to be a little bit harder than the problems that we've done up to this point. But if you've followed along in the video, then you should have the skills necessary to solve this problem. So the problem states that given a string S, return the longest palindromic substring in S. So for example, if S is equal to BABAD, then BAB is the longest palindromic substring. And that's because BAB reads the same from left to right and right to left. So to solve this problem, we can use a similar approach like how we did in 2 pointers, making one pointer called I and one pointer called J. So I should always take one step at a time, while J will be one step ahead of I. And this way, if we reference S of I colon J, that should get all of the elements from the range I to J, which will be an entire substring. And then we could just check if that substring is a palindrome by doing the colon -1 that we've been doing. And if so, just append it to a list called ants. So now we can try coding this up. So first, we need to make a variable for len s. So we can say n is equal to len s. And this is just because it's going to be a lot easier because we don't have to type out len s every time, So now we can say for I in range n. And this is going to be our first pointer. And now we need to make the j pointer, which is going to be constantly 1 ahead of I. So for j in range, I plus 1, and it should end at the end of the list, so n plus 1. So now to reference all the elements between pointer I and pointer j, we can just say if s of I colon j is equal to s of I colon j colon -1. And this is basically just reversing the substring, like how we did in the palindromic number question. And we also need to make sure that the length of the substring, so even if it is a palindrome, we need to make sure the length of the palindrome is the longest one up to date. So we also need to check that on top of this condition, if si colon j, if the length of that substring is greater than the current max length, then we can append the current substring that we're on to a list, and also change the max length to what we just encountered. And we need to define the variable ants for a list as well as cur as 0, because when we start iterating through the list, we haven't encountered any palindromes yet. And finally, for the output, we just need to output the last element in ants, as this is going to be the final element our code has reached after iterating through everything in the list. So running this on the 3 sample test cases that Leetcode provides, we can see that we are passing this with 0 ms. And if we submit the code, we will again see that it does in fact pass all of the test cases. So this is probably one of the easier medium problems. However, for somebody who's never solved medium problems in the past, it is still a pretty good learning experience. So I'd highly recommend this problem. And you'll notice that we passed this with 9,039 milliseconds and it beat 5%. So in no way did we make the most efficient solution. If you guys want to know what that is, then let me know in the comments and I'll definitely let you guys know. But there are a lot better ways to do this problem, but I just gave the most beginner friendly and intuitive approach based on what we've been learning in this video. So with that said, if you guys have enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. It just helps out my channel as I'm a pretty new YouTuber, so I'd highly appreciate it. With that said, keep an eye out for new videos, and peace.